The shuttle was falling apart around her. Park gripped the safety harness as fire and smoke filled the cabin. Warning lights flashed red. The computer voice repeated the same words again and again, crash imminent, but already knew that. She could see the jungle moon rushing up through the cracked window, green and wild and hungry. She closed her eyes and thought of home. She thought of her mother's cooking. She thought of the small apartment in where she grew up. She thought of all the patients she had saved in her 5 years as a field medic aboard the horizon's edge. Then the shuttle hit the ground, and everything went black. When opened her eyes, she was hanging upside down. Blood dripped from a cut on her forehead. The cabin was dark except for the weak glow of dying emergency lights. She could hear the jungle outside, strange birds calling, insects buzzing, and something else. Something large moving through the trees. She freed herself from the harness and fell hard onto the ceiling, which was now the floor. Her body hurt everywhere. Her ribs felt cracked. Her left ankle screamed when she put weight on it, but she was alive. Against all odds, she was alive. Crawled through the wreckage and found her medkit still attached to the wall. The beacon was damaged but still working, sending out a weak signal into the void. Someone would come for her. She just had to survive until then. But surviving on 7 was not simple. Every recruit in the fleet knew about this moon. It was listed in the danger files as a Class 4 hostile environment. The jungle itself was deadly, full of poisonous plants, aggressive animals, and unstable ground that could swallow a person whole. But the real danger was not the jungle. The real danger was had seen pictures of them during her training. They were nightmares made of scale and claw. Adults stood over 2 meters tall, covered in black scales that could stop a bullet. Their claws could cut through steel. Their teeth could crush bone. They could see heat with their eyes, which meant hiding from them was almost impossible. The Galactic Council had tried to make contact with the 3 times over the past 300 years. Every team they sent was killed. They did not want peace. They did not want trade. They wanted only to be left alone, and they killed anyone who came too close. Was now very, very close. She gathered what supplies she could find: water purification tablets, protein bars, a thermal jacket, and a long metal rod from the broken shuttle frame. It was not much, but it would have to be enough. She needed to find shelter before dark. She needed to hide her heat signature somehow. She needed to stay alive. The jungle swallowed her within minutes of leaving the crash site. Huge trees blocked out the sky. Vines hung down like curtains. The air was thick and wet and smelled of rot and flowers. Moved as quietly as she could, but every step seemed to make noise. Branches cracked. Leaves rustled. Her own breathing sounded too loud in her ears. She walked for 2 hours before she heard it. At first she thought it was a bird, a strange, high sound that rose and fell like a song. But as she moved closer, she realized it was not a song at all. It was crying. Stopped behind a massive tree trunk and looked around carefully. The sound was coming from a small clearing ahead. Something was trapped there. Something was in pain. Every part of her training told her to walk away. She did not know what was making that sound. It could be a trap. It could be bait used by some predator to attract prey. She should find shelter, wait for rescue, and stay hidden. But had become a medic because she could not ignore suffering. She had joined the fleet to help people, to save lives, to ease pain wherever she found it. That was who she was. That was who she would always be. She moved into the clearing. The creature was small. That was her first thought. It was covered in black scales that shimmered like oil in the fatting sunlight. It had 4 legs and a long tail and a head shaped like a triangle. Its eyes were amber-colored and full of tears. It was a baby, a cub. Its back leg was trapped under a fallen tree branch. The bone was clearly broken, could see the wrong angle even from a distance. The cub had been struggling to free itself for a long time. Its claws had torn up the ground all around it. Its scales were cracked and bleeding in several places. And it was not alone. 6 creatures circled the clearing. They looked like a mix between dogs and spiders, with 6 legs and bodies covered in gray fur. Their mouths were full of needle-thin teeth. Recognized them from her survival training, scavengers that hunted in packs. They were waiting for the cub to die. The cub saw her. Its amber eyes went wide. It tried to roar, but only a weak sound came out. It was too young, too hurt, too tired to defend itself. Looked at the scavengers. She looked at the cub. She looked at the sky where the sun was starting to set. If she helped the cub, the mother might find her. Adults were known to hunt for miles when their young were threatened. Helping this cub could mean her death. If she walked away, the scavengers would eat the cub alive. She would hear it screaming as she searched for shelter. She would remember that sound for the rest of her life. It was not really a choice. Stepped into the clearing and raised her metal rod. "Hey," she shouted at the scavengers. Her voice echoed through the jungle. "Get away from it." The scavengers turned to look at her. 6 pairs of hungry eyes studied this new creature that had entered their hunting ground. She was bigger than the cub. She was standing on 2 legs. She was holding something shiny. But she was also bleeding. She was also weak. She was also alone. The largest scavenger made a clicking sound with its teeth. The others spread out, surrounding her in a half circle. Adjusted her grip on the metal rod. "Okay," she whispered to herself. "Okay, you wanted to save lives. Time to save a life." The first scavenger lunged at her throat. The scavenger hit like a missile. She swung the metal rod and caught it across the face, sending it spinning into the bushes with a howl of pain. But 2 more were already attacking. One bit into her forearm. The other slashed at her shoulder with claws like broken glass. Screamed. The pain was like fire, bright and hot and everywhere. Blood poured down her arm and soaked into her uniform. But she did not fall. She did not run. She planted her feet in the soft jungle dirt and fought. She swung the rod again and again. She kicked. She punched. She bit one scavenger on the ear when it got too close to her face. The creatures were fast and hungry, but they were also cowards. They expected easy meals, not prey that fought back. After what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, the surviving scavengers retreated into the jungle. 4 of them lay dead or dying in the clearing. The other 2 had run away, leaving trails of blood behind them. Stood in the center of the clearing, breathing hard. Her body shook. Her wounds burned. She counted 7 cuts on her arms and shoulders, and she could feel more on her back. The deepest wound was on her left shoulder, where a scavenger had torn through muscle almost to the bone. She was hurt badly. She needed treatment immediately. But first she looked at the cub. It was watching her with those amber eyes. The fear was still there, but something else too, something like wonder. This strange creature had fought for it. This alien had bled for it. "It is okay," said softly. Her voice was shaking. "I am going to help you now." She approached slowly, keeping her hands where the cub could see them. She had no idea if it understood her words, but she hoped it could understand her tone. Calm, gentle, safe. The cub growled when she got close. Its little claws dug into the dirt, but it did not try to bite her. "I know," said. "I am scared too, but we are going to get through this together, okay? Just let me look at your leg." The break was bad. The bone had snapped cleanly, but the leg was swelling quickly. Without treatment, the cub would either die from the injury or be eaten by other predators. It could not run. It could not hunt. It could not survive alone. Opened her med kit and got to work. She cleaned the wound with precious antiseptic, using more than she should have on herself. She found 2 straight sticks and used strips of her uniform to create a splint. The cub whimpered and cried as she worked, but it did not attack her. It seemed to understand that she was trying to help. When she finished with the cub's leg, she finally looked at her own wounds. They were worse than she had hoped. The shoulder wound was already showing signs of infection. the edges red and angry. She cleaned it as best she could and wrapped it with bandages from the kit. She had enough supplies for maybe 3 days. After that, she would be out of medicine. The sun had set during the fight, and the jungle was now dark and full of sounds. Could hear creatures moving in the shadows. She could hear wings in the sky above. Staying in this clearing was dangerous, but moving the cub was impossible. She would have to protect it here. "I need to give you a name," said to the cub. She was talking partly to keep herself calm. "I cannot just call you the cub forever." The cub tilted its head, watching her. "How about?" smiled despite everything. "It means spring in my language. New beginnings. I think we could both use some new beginnings right now." The cub made a soft sound that was almost like agreement. Built a small fire using her survival training. The flames would keep most predators away and help hide their heat signatures from anything using thermal vision. She sat with her back against a tree and her metal rod across her lap, ready to fight anything that came close. Crawled toward her slowly, dragging its splinted leg. It stopped next to her and pressed its small body against her side. "Oh," said surprised, "you are cold." She wrapped her thermal jacket around, leaving herself exposed to the cool night air. The cub relaxed almost immediately, its amber eyes closing halfway. Within minutes, it was asleep. Stayed awake, she had to. The first night passed slowly. Creatures came to the edge of the firelight and watched them with glowing eyes, but nothing attacked. Talked to herself to stay alert, reciting medical procedures, listing the names of bones in the body, singing old songs her mother had taught her. By morning she was exhausted, but she could not rest yet. She found food in the jungle, fruits that her survival training said were safe, insects that were rich in protein. She brought everything back to and shared it equally. The cub ate hungrily, its small teeth crushing the fruits to pulp. The second day was harder than the first. Fever started in the afternoon. Her shoulder wound was definitely infected now, the skin around it hot and swollen. She used the last of her antibiotics, knowing it probably would not be enough. She needed real medical treatment. She needed a hospital. She was going to die on this moon. But not yet, not while still needed her. She changed the cub's bandages. She checked the splint. She fed it and talked to it and kept the fire burning. When she was too weak to stand, she sat. When she was too weak to sit, she lay down with curled against her chest. On the third night, the fever dreams came. She saw her mother standing in the jungle calling her name. She saw her childhood home, the windows full of warm light. She saw the faces of every patient she had ever saved, smiling at her, thanking her, telling her it was okay to rest now. But was warm against her body, was breathing slowly and peacefully, trusted her. Held on. On the fourth night she woke to the sound of something moving through the jungle, not the small sounds of scavengers, not the quick sounds of prey animals running away. This was something big, something powerful, something that made the ground shake with every step. Woke up too. The cub's amber eyes went wide. It made a sound had never heard before, not a growl, not a cry, but something else. A call. The movement in the jungle stopped. Then it started again, faster now, coming straight toward them. Stood up on shaking legs. Her fever was so high that the world seemed to spin around her. She could barely hold her metal rod. She could barely stand. But she stepped in front of and faced the darkness. "Whatever you are," she whispered, "you will have to go through me first." The darkness moved, and the mother arrived. She was the most terrifying thing had ever seen. The mother stepped into the firelight like a shadow made solid. She was 3 meters tall from ground to shoulder, her body covered in scales so dark they seemed to eat the light. Her eyes burned like molten gold in the darkness. Her claws left deep marks in the jungle floor with every step. Legs wanted to run. Every part of her brain screamed at her to flee, to hide, to save herself. This was a predator beyond anything she had ever faced. This was death itself, walking on 4 legs. But behind her made a small, hopeful sound. The cub recognized its mother. It wanted to go to her, and could not move aside. She could not step away, because the mother did not know why this human was here. The mother only saw a stranger standing over her wounded child. The mother might attack without understanding, so stayed where she was. "Please," she said. Her voice came out as a whisper. The fever made her words feel thick and slow. "I did not hurt your baby. I helped your baby." The mother stopped 3 steps away from. Her golden eyes moved down to look at, taking in the splint, the bandages, the thermal jacket wrapped around the small body. Then those eyes moved up to, studying the wounds on her arms, the blood on her uniform, the way she swayed on her feet like a tree in a storm. A low rumble came from the mother's throat. Not a roar, not a growl, something else. Something that vibrated through her chest and made her bones hum. The mother took another step forward, raised her metal rod. It was a foolish thing to do. The rod would do nothing against this creature, but it was all she had. "I will not let you hurt," she said. She did not know if the mother could understand her words, but she spoke them anyway. "I know you are the mother. I know you want your child back, but I need to know you will not hurt us first." The mother tilted her great head. Something changed in those golden eyes. The rage was still there, burning hot and dangerous, but there was something else too: curiosity, interest. This tiny creature was not running. This tiny creature was not begging for mercy. This tiny creature was standing between a matriarch and her cub, holding a piece of metal, ready to fight. The mother had lived for 40 winters. She had hunted across 3 territories. She had fought rivals twice her size and won. She had seen aliens come to her moon before, creatures with weapons and ships and fear in their hearts. They had come to study. They had come to capture. They had come to kill. None of them had ever come to protect. The mother lowered her head until her massive face was level with us. Hot breath washed over the human, carrying the smell of meat and jungle flowers. Those golden eyes, each one as big as fist, stared into her own. Did not look away. She could not look away. Her legs were shaking so badly she thought she might fall, but she kept her eyes locked on the mother's gaze. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then slowly, the mother moved her head to the side. She pressed the top of her snout against its wounded shoulder, the deepest wound, the one that was infected and burning with fever. The touch was gentle, softer than anything had expected from such a massive creature. The cool scales felt good against her hot skin. The mother pulled back and made that deep rumbling sound again, but this time it felt different. This time it felt almost like approval. Did not understand what had just happened, but she knew somehow that she was no longer in danger. Her legs finally gave out. She fell to her knees in the jungle dirt, the metal rod dropping from her fingers. The world spun around her. Darkness crept in at the edges of her vision. The last thing she saw before passing out was the mother curling her massive body around both, and creating a wall of scale and muscle that nothing in the jungle would dare to challenge. The last thing she felt was safe. When woke up, she was not in the jungle anymore. She was lying on something soft, a bed made of dried leaves and some kind of moss that smelled like honey. Above her was a ceiling made of woven branches, with gaps that let sunlight through in golden streams. The air was warm and dry, nothing like the wet heat of the jungle floor. She tried to sit up, and pain shot through her entire body, but it was different pain than before, cleaner somehow. She looked down at herself and saw that her wounds had been treated. Strange green paste covered the cuts on her arms. The wound on her shoulder was wrapped in leaves that tingled against her skin. She whispered. Her throat was dry, her voice rough. A small weight shifted against her side. She looked over and saw the cub curled up next to her, sleeping peacefully. The splint was still on its leg, but someone had added more support to it. The bandages were fresh. They were alive, Both of them were alive. Looked around the room, if it could be called a room. It was more like a cave carved into the side of a giant tree, the walls smooth and decorated with strange patterns that might have been writing. Through an opening in one wall, she could see more structures in the distance. Buildings, homes. This was a settlement, a village. The mother appeared in the doorway, blocking out the light. She carried something in her mouth, a fruit of some kind, purple and round. She dropped it gently next to his bed and made that rumbling sound again. "For me?" asked. The mother pushed the fruit closer with her snout. Took it and bit into it. The juice was sweet and cool, running down her chin. She had not realized how hungry she was until she started eating. She finished the fruit in seconds. The mother watched her eat. There was something almost soft in those golden eyes now. Not warmth exactly. Probably did not feel warmth the way humans did, but something close. Respect, maybe. Gratitude. Looked at the mother and placed her hand over her own heart. "Thank you," she said. "Thank you for saving me. Thank you for letting me save." The mother tilted her head. Then she reached out with one massive claw and touched the shoulder wound, so gently that it did not hurt at all. She made a sound, a single deep note that rose and fell like music. Did not know what it meant, not yet. But she would learn. Days turned into weeks, weeks turned into months, and learned. She learned that the mother's name was Dahlia, a word in the language that meant shadow that protects. She learned that Dahlia was not just any mother, but a first claw, a leader of her tribe, respected and feared across 3 territories. She learned that was Dahlia's only surviving cub, the last of a litter of 4. The others had been taken by a sickness that swept through the jungle the season before. She learned that she had saved the most precious thing in Dahlia's world. The language was not like any human language. It was made of sounds, deep rumbles, sharp clicks, soft whistles, combined with movements of the body. The way it held its tail meant as much as the noise it made. The angle of the head changed the meaning of every sound. Learned slowly, making mistakes every day. She made sounds that meant insults when she meant greetings. She moved her body in ways that made the around her confused or amused, but she kept trying. She kept learning. And they were patient with her. This surprised her most of all. Everything she had been taught about them painted them as monsters, mindless killers who attacked without thought or reason. But the creatures around her were nothing like that. They were thoughtful. They were careful. They took care of their young, their old, and their sick. They built homes and made tools and created art. They were a civilization, not a primitive one, but a different one. They had simply chosen a different path than humans, living with the jungle instead of trying to control it. Dahlia's brother became guide. His name was, which meant steady stone. He was smaller than Dahlia but still huge by human standards, with scales that had a faint blue shine to them. Unlike his sister's golden eyes, his were silver, and they seemed to miss nothing. Taught how to find food in the jungle. He taught her which plants were safe and which would kill her in seconds. He taught her how to read the weather by watching the movements of insects and the colors of the sky. And he taught her about the scars of worth. It happened one evening when the sun was setting and the tribe was gathering for the nightly meal. Sat near the edge of the group, still feeling like an outsider despite everything. Her wounds had healed mostly, but they had left marks, thick, raised scars on her arms and shoulders and back. A young approached her. It was barely more than a cub itself, maybe twice age. It moved slowly, almost shyly, and stopped in front of with its head lowered. Did not understand. She looked at who was watching nearby. The young reached out one small claw and touched the scar on his forearm, the deepest one, where the scavenger had bitten down to the bone. A sound came from the young, a single note, low and reverent. Then it bowed its head even lower and moved away. "What was that?" asked. Made the sound for amusement, a series of soft clicks. It was showing respect. Respect for what? moved closer and touched the same scar with his own claw. For what this represents. Looked down at her arm. It is just a scar. I got it fighting the scavengers. Yes, said. You got it protecting. You got it bleeding for a cub that was not your own. You got it choosing pain so that another might live. He pulled back his claw. In our culture, there is nothing more honored than this. He explained everything to her that night. Among the scars were not hidden or healed away. They were displayed with pride. Each scar told a story, a moment when someone had chosen to sacrifice for another. Warriors showed their scars from battles fought to protect the tribe. Mothers showed their scars from difficult births. Healers showed their scars from treating the sick and wounded. The more scars one carried for the sake of others, the higher their standing in the tribe. Its body was covered in scars. Among our people, said, you would be considered a great hero, a protector, someone worthy of the highest respect. Touched the scar on her shoulder, the deepest one, the one Dahlia had touched that first night. Is that why she spared me? Asked. Because of the scars. Partly, admitted, but mostly because of what the scars meant. You stood between a first claw and her cub. You were sick and weak and dying, but you did not run. You were ready to fight to the death for a child you had only known for 4 days. He made a sound that had learned meant deep emotion. My sister has lived 40 winters, he continued. She has seen many aliens. They came with weapons. They came with fear. They came with greed. None of them ever came with love. The word he used, love, was not exactly the human word. It was closer to the willingness to bleed for another. In the language, there was no difference between the two. As the weeks passed, status in the tribe grew. Elders who had ignored her at first now bowed their heads when she walked by. Young asked to touch her scars and hear the stories behind them. Mothers brought their cubs to meet her, as if her presence might bless their children with courage. Recovered fully, the little cub grew stronger every day, and soon it was running and playing with the other young, but it never forgot. Every night it would find her and curl up at her side to sleep. Every morning it would bring her food before eating itself. Dahlia watched all of this with those golden eyes that seemed to see everything. One day she approached during the morning meal. The tribe fell silent. When a first claw moved, everyone paid attention. Dahlia stood before and made a series of sounds, formal words in the language. Understood most of them now. You saved my blood. You bled for my child. You stood in the place where a mother should stand. Dahlia lowered her great head. By the old laws, this makes you family. She touched her snout to shoulder scar. By the old laws, this makes you. A sound rose from the gathered tribe. Not quite a cheer, did not cheer like humans, but something close. A rumble of approval that vibrated through the ground and up through bones. She belonged now, not as a visitor, not as an outsider, but as one of them. Placed her hand on Dahlia's snout. I am honored, she said in her best. I will try to be worthy. Dahlia made the sound of amusement. You already are. 3 months after her shuttle crashed, they finally came for her. Was helping prepare the morning hunt when she heard it, a sound that did not belong to the jungle. The roar of engines cutting through clouds, the whine of a ship entering the atmosphere. She looked up and saw the rescue shuttle descending toward the jungle moon, its hull gleaming silver against the green sky. Her people had found her. The shuttle landed in a clearing half a kilometer from the settlement. Watched from the tree line as soldiers in combat armor poured out, their weapons raised, their faces hidden behind helmets. They moved like they expected an attack. She recognized the markings on their armor. They were Marines from the horizon's edge, her ship, her crew. They had not given up on her. The leader of the group removed her helmet, recognized her immediately, Commander Han, a woman with sharp eyes and a sharper mind, had been commanding officer for 3 years. She was tough, fair, and fiercely protective of her people. Spread out, ordered. Search for survivors, watch for hostile wildlife. and keep your eyes open for." The soldiers moved into the jungle, their weapons ready. Knew she had to act quickly. If the Marines saw the first, they would shoot. If they saw the Marines first, they would attack. 300 years of fear and misunderstanding would explode into violence. She stepped out of the tree line. Commander Han. Every weapon in the clearing turned toward her, raised her hands, showing she was unarmed. The soldiers stared at her tattered uniform, her bare feet, her scars. "Lieutenant Park's voice was full of shock. "You are alive." "I am alive," walked toward the group slowly, "and I am not alone." Behind her, they emerged from the jungle. Dahlia came first, her massive body moving with careful grace. Then the hunters, then the elders, then the mothers with their cubs. The entire tribe stepped into the clearing and stood behind their human sister. Walked its side, fully grown now and beautiful, its scales shining like polished obsidian. The Marines raised their weapons higher. Some of them were shaking. There were the monsters from their nightmares, and now dozens of them stood before them. "Lower your weapons," said. Her voice was calm, steady. "Lieutenant," said slowly, "step away from those creatures." "No," did not move. "These are my people too." She explained everything. The crash, the scavengers, Dahlia's mercy, the months she had spent learning language and culture. She told them about the scars of worth. She told them about what it meant to be accepted as family. She told them that humanity had been wrong about them for 300 years. "They are not monsters," said. "They are not mindless killers. They are a proud people with families and art and honor. They attacked previous contact teams because those teams came with weapons and fear. No one ever came in peace." She gestured to herself, to her scars, her bare feet, her place among the tribe. "I came in pain, I came in desperation, but I came without violence, and they accepted me." She looked at the standing behind her. She looked at the small one, standing at the lieutenant's side like a loyal guardian. Then she lowered her weapon. "Stand down," she ordered her Marines. "Weapons safe now." The soldiers hesitated. 300 years of training screamed at them to keep their guns ready, but they trusted their commander. One by one, they lowered their weapons. Dahlia watched all of this with those golden eyes. Then she stepped forward, past, and stopped in front of. The commander did not run. She did not reach for her weapon. She stood her ground, looking up at the massive predator before her. Dahlia made a sound, a formal greeting in the language. Translated, she says welcome. She asks if you come in peace. Straightened her shoulders. Tell her yes. Tell her humanity would like to start over. The Galactic Council arrived within the week. Diplomats from 12 systems came to 7, expecting another failed contact. They found Lieutenant Park serving as the first human ambassador to the, with Dahlia standing as her counterpart. During the formal ceremony, Dahlia performed an act that no had ever done in front of aliens before. She stepped forward, and before the assembled delegates from across the galaxy, touched scars one by one. "This one," Dahlia said, and translated for the crowd, "for shielding a cub from teeth." She touched the next scar. "This one, for bleeding so a child would not." And the next. "This one, for standing when running would have saved her." Finally, Dahlia touched the scar on shoulder, the deepest one, the one that had changed everything. "This one made her family." The council watched in stunned silence as the most feared predators in the galaxy bowed their heads to a single human medic. Years passed. The alliance between humanity and the became one of the strongest in the galaxy. Human doctors trained alongside healers. Warriors served aboard human vessels. Two species, so different in form, found common ground in the values they shared. Never returned to space permanently. She split her time between Earth and 7, serving as the bridge between worlds. She grew old doing what she loved, bringing people together, healing wounds both physical and otherwise. On her final visit to the jungle, Moon, her hair gray and her body slow, sat beneath the great trees at her side. Was an elder now too, a leader of the tribe in his own right. His cubs played around them, chasing each other through the ancient forest. One of the cubs, a female with scales that shimmered silver, climbed into his lap. Small claws traced the faded scars on her arm. "Tell us the story again, grandmother," the cub said smiled and rested her hand on its massive head. "Once upon a time," she began, speaking in a language that had once been alien to her but now felt like home, "a very scared human found a very small trapped under a tree. And the jungle listened. And the stars above remembered the day everything changed. And somewhere in the great archives of the Galactic Council, the story was written down for future generations. The story of the human who shielded a predator cub with bare hands and taught the galaxy that love, the willingness to bleed for another, was the strongest force in the universe." The end.